Welcome back and thank you for staying with Morning Express. Now over to our next agenda of the day in terms of person of interest. Now, our person of interest today is an agricultural expert who has served as an advisor to government and the former managing director of the Rockefeller Foundation, whose venture into politics saw him vie for governor and lose. His second stab at governorship ended in a compromise that saw him take a back seat as a deputy governor before becoming the first deputy governor to ascend to power following the impeachment of a sitting governor. Now, this week on Person of Interest, we speak to Kiambu Governor James Nyoro 1 year after he took office. Take a look. I am honored to have the presence with me of Governor James Nyoro, who represents the people of Kiambu County as their governor. It would be interesting to get to know the man who leads that particular county, and not just in terms of his leadership, but also private life and some aspects of it as well. Governor James Nyoro, Your Excellency, thank you so much for gracing us right here.
Thank you, and it's really an honor to discuss all those aspects with you in the new year.
Yes, quite so, and Happy New Year as well.
Happy New Year to you too.
Yes.
It's only to 20-something days, so still new.
Quite so, and I know you must be a busy man being a politician and a leader as well, knowing the nature of politics in the country. Barely 18 months to the next general election, and you can see things are really heated up. Yes, what do you have to say about that, perhaps, as we start?
Well, I think for people who are involved in both development and politics, it will be ill-advised to start thinking about 2022 August at this stage, because what that does is that it deflects your thinking, because there's still work that needs to be done. We've just come out of we are still within the COVID. We've lost a whole year.
True.
A lot of people have lost their livelihoods. Children are going back to school. So there are a lot of challenges. Economically, you can see there are challenges. So to start thinking about 2022 for a governor who has a county to run, I think would be ill-advised.
Quite so.
Having said that, that doesn't mean that you are not planning, but it should not be your total preoccupation. Otherwise, then we get to where the country is, where every day we are talking about 2022. So for me, the focus would still be what we need to do for the people of Kiambu.
Okay, and we'll definitely get to discuss about your development agenda for the people of Kiambu. But away from that, and I'd like this to be the starting point, who exactly is James Nyoro? Apart from the governor, before there was politics in your life, how exactly would you introduce yourself?
Well, it's very interesting when you ask that question, because when I look back, I do not even ever remember when I thought I would become a politician.
This was never in the picture?
Never in my early days. But as you know, I am born in Kiambu County, in Kikuyu sub-county, the arid part of Kiambu. That is the Ndeya part. That's where I was born, and I went to school there. But then, of course, I had the opportunity to attend some of the best schools in the country. I went to Mangu High School and, did my first degree in agriculture. But I found myself in the area of agricultural economics, more specifically in the area of policy. So that's how my life evolved. I, at one point, thought that I would become a doctor. In fact, most of my colleagues from Mangu High School are medical doctors. Quite a number of them, but something somewhere happened. And
what happened? Why did you change from?
Well, it's a long story because on that year when we were just about to join the university, my dad passed on. Being the firstborn, I realized that going to the university for 5 years was a long time, and there were other children who are who practically would be dependent on me. So I chose, and I was working with Kari now. It was a different name, Yavro. I was working with them there, and I happened to have been working with the dean of the Faculty of Agriculture.
Yes.
At that point, he was, my senior researcher. And, as we were talking about that and over coffee, then we agreed that maybe I should go for a shorter course. That was how I ended up in agriculture.
In agriculture.
And all my friends are medical doctors,
yes.
so I'm well catered for.
Okay. And you've never looked back ever since?
No, at one point, when before we graduated, I got very bored because I was looking at what you do if you graduate as an agricultural graduate. You either go to extension to advise farmers on how to plant maize,
yes.
or I wanted to become a researcher. So my first 6 months after graduation, I was actually doing some agronomic work at the Potato Research Station in Tigoni. That was a bit interesting. I thought that to be a bit interesting. But otherwise, to imagine that you be somebody in charge of extension, that to me was really, I was saying that would be very, very boring. So I only did that for 6 months in Tigoni. As you can imagine, that time the research institutes did not even have money.
At all, yeah.
Yeah, so you could not even carry any agronomic research and whatever. But, along that time, I got the opportunity to join a Coffee Research Foundation in Ruiru, and immediately got a scholarship to go to University of London to do agriculture economics. So my whole future changed from being an agronomist to agriculture economics. And when I went to College, University of London, I found myself specializing in policy. So that's my story.
Okay, and you've never looked back ever since?
I never looked back. I think I've enjoyed, I can tell you that I've enjoyed agricultural policy. It has propelled me to many areas, many institutions, including all the international organizations that I've worked for.
Okay, in one way or the other, it's also propelled you to where you are right now.
Well, that would be an interesting story.
Yeah.
Because if I tell you what actually made me start to think about politics and
leadership.
So, as an agricultural economist, I was working for Coffee Research. I worked for Coffee Research Foundation for 9 years. And when I left, I joined a project that was undertaken jointly by Stanford University, University of Arizona, and Edgerton University. And the project was called PAM, PAM, Policy Analysis Metrics.
Okay.
So for 17 years, we were doing policy research on agricultural sector in Kenya.
Yes.
Now, those 17 years, a lot of it was whether or not we should liberalize the agriculture sector. If you can go back, you will know that the agriculture sector was mainly controlled by government. So you could not even move 2 bags of maize from one district to another without getting a permit. So we were working on merits and demerits of government letting off. And during that time, what came out, and we did a number of policy papers.
Yeah.
We did the poverty reduction strategy paper. That was a paper that Moi wanted to implement in 2002. But when Kibaki came in, he said he did not want to hear anything about poverty.
Yes.
So we move on and we started talking about wealth creation. We went to Vision 2030. I was among the 15 Kenyans who are involved in formulation of Vision 2030. But back to where this came from is that I did a lot of policy work. But I realized that whatever you think is good policies are not always adopted for several reasons. Policies are not adopted because they are necessarily good, because it has to look at the political economy. Who are the gainers and who are the losers?
As well.
So over time, I realized that you can come up with all this. Look at the sugar sector. We came up with all the policies of liberalizing the sugar sector. But even up to today, it has never been liberalized. So I was very frustrated. And I felt that we have the knowledge, we can get all the good policies, but unfortunately, unless they get to somebody who can implement, then you cannot go far. Then I was very frustrated by doing that, and 2008, I left policy research work and I joined the Rockefeller Foundation.
After how many years?
After 17 years.
Wow, okay.
I joined the Rockefeller Foundation. Now, this was a completely different ballgame. Because remember there we were dealing with policy.
Yes.
Here, we are dealing with money. Because Rockefeller Foundation is just like a bank. It's only that they give you free money. So they give grants. They don't give credit.
Yeah.
And whatever project we gave money to would succeed. We succeeded in agriculture. We were doing some agriculture in Western Kenya. We succeeded in health. We actually started universal health coverage in Rwanda and Ghana. So we started with digital employment, and we had a big office near Ngara where we were recruiting people from Madale. So everything that we did was successful.
Yeah.
However, whatever we did at the Rockefeller Foundation could not be scaled up. So if you succeed as a small village,
okay,
you cannot scale up
the entire
or even replicate in other villages. Why? Because you have to have the right policy.
Exactly.
Okay? So you go back to the policy and say, if you have money and you want to do good projects, you have to formulate good policies that will blow up the successes. So then 2010, Constitution movement came.
Yes.
And the position of governor was created. And I looked at myself, and I was in New York, and I was thinking about this, and I said, look, if you are a governor, you can formulate the right policies.
Yes.
You also can get money.
And implement.
And then implement that and replicate and you know, so that was the driving force.
That's where the
So I felt my two worlds, previous worlds, would come together if I become governor. And that's how, because a lot of my friends were asking me in 2013 why, you know, I could leave an international job to come run for a position I was not sure of, because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. In fact, one of my colleagues asked me, said, you are either mad or you know what you are doing. And later on, after 2013, he said, I knew you didn't know what you are doing, you are mad.
Well, look at you now. But that's very interesting, idea-based politics, and that seems to be the bedrock of your entry into leadership and governorship, all that. But 2013 wasn't a successful year,
it was not.
as you mentioned.
It was not. For several reasons. For several reasons, but we don't want to go to that.
Okay.
Because in politics, what you see is not what there is.
Yeah.
And in politics, you cannot bring diplomacy in politics. And you are dealing with people who can tell you all kinds of things. So I was new, I was naive, and so on. And therefore, I didn't make it.
Yeah.
And on that of March 2013, I found myself without a job.
Okay. Where do you start? You don't have a job, you've just quit.
We don't have a job, you are used to international exposure and all of that. But in the meantime, very interesting, because by the 15th of April, I was doing a consultancy for the Dutch government.
That was really fast.
Oh, yes. I mean, you don't...
Well, your credentials speak for... Yes.
I was tired because of running across the whole country.
I can imagine.
You know, we did a consultancy actually for Equity Bank. And we secured $4.5 million for Equity Bank for smallholder agriculture. So it was, you know, so I moved into that with a friend of mine. And it was in the middle of doing that I was asked to do another consultancy of formulating agricultural insurance policy for the Ministry of Agriculture funded by GIZ. And I was in Kirimo House working on that project when I received a call. And I was asked to report to a particular office, and I was asked if I would become agricultural advisor, policy advisor to the presidency. And, you know, for me, it was just to say yes. So from about May of 2013, all the way to close to 1.5 years, I was actually advisor, agricultural advisor. It was agriculture, climate change, a lot of things. So I was advising on a number of things at the presidency, based at the deputy president's office. So I did that for 1.5 years. Very, very interesting things emerged. We were at that point working on Garanda Kuraru irrigation project. We were working with the Israelis in formulating that project. We were working with Kari to identify the soil conditions. At that point, we were starting other irrigation projects because you remember that was when the Jubilee government had set particular agenda on food security and so on. So, you know, some interesting things, some challenges. And, you know, after 1.5 years, I looked back and I felt I needed to change into something else. Therefore, I had to go and request the President, His Excellency, the President, to allow me to step down. That is when now I became the senior policy advisor to Bill and Merida in their foundation in Seattle.
Okay.
And, you know, we went through with the President, and the President agreed because, you know, also I would like kind of become a goodwill ambassador.
All right.
And you know, that's how now I ended up in Seattle with Bill and Merida Gates Foundation, advising them on countries and policies. And I was working in 4 countries in Africa. I was working for Nigeria, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Rwanda.
Okay, so all in all, it's been a decorated career. You've definitely added your voice to various organizations, including the government as well. But fast forward, when the name James Nyoro hit headlines properly, is when perhaps you assumed the position of deputy governor under the former governor.
Yeah.
Now, that got interesting because later on we were fed to the spectacle of power.
Yes.
And it's not easy. As you mentioned in 2013, politics isn't clean. What exactly would be your take home? How would you describe that particular experience of coming over to the governor's position? What drove you to actually want to not just be deputy governor, but also assume the position?
You know, after you know, the debacle of 2013 and having left, and I was working in the international arena, and like I told you, I was actually not in charge of Kenya. I was working with the neighboring countries, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Rwanda,
not Kenya.
Okay. And I knew that Kenya still needed some help in terms of agricultural transformation and, you know, poverty reduction, food security, and so on. But more importantly, I had not lost my dream. You know, once you lose an election and you know you did not lose that election fairly, you always feel that you better have a second chance. Yeah. And not only you, people are telling you that you have to come back. You can't just try it once. So I left my job in Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in June of 2016 because I wanted to prepare for 2017. And you know, being away for 1 year is a long time. You lose the contact in politics. Yes. So I wanted to come back and get some orientation and all of that. But, you know, at that point, you know, Kiambu politics had changed because there was entry of Honorable Waitito. He was a member of parliament for Kabete.
Yes.
And now he was eyeing the position of governor. So he was doing all these kind of things. And when I came, my idea was to run independently as I had run in 2013. But, you know, there are many things that happen. You know, people are trying to prevail on us to try and see if we can have a combined force. I mean, the same thing that you are seeing in Jubilee, you know, bring several parties together. Yeah. So, but you know, I think for me, again, I was a bit naive with a lot of people who were backing me, and they came to realize that we were naive because there is nothing like a political agreement. I mean, we went to an extent of signing an MOU saying that I will be doing this and the Governor Waitito will be doing this, and we agreed on many things. Most of our financiers were doing that because they could see the combination that we are bringing in. Yeah. Naively, they were thinking that I would do the management with him, but he would shield us from the political, you know, the politics of Kiambu and so on. But that did not work. I think when we got in, I think the first thing I realized was that, first of all, he did not consider that MOU at all. There was no...
Was anything in the MOU implemented?
No, nothing.
Okay.
Nothing at all. And there was no legal basis of going to court or anything like that because you go by the Constitution. And the Constitution is very clear that, the governor takes the top position.
Exactly.
And then the deputy is the principal assistant to the governor.
Yeah.
The constitution is very clear. And that is the problem we've been having with deputy governors. Because you go in there, and like for us, we were going there with an agreement that was way above what the constitution provided
Yes.
for. But that is not really important. I think what is important is that things started deteriorating, moving from bad to worse. And I could not sit back and suffer, and at the same time, I'm seeing things taking that bad trajectory.
What was the last straw? What actually made you call it quits? Say enough is enough.
Well, I didn't call it quit. I tried many things, and I tried talking to many friends, including the ones who had, kind of managed this relationship. But after close to 2 years, and realizing that it was very, very difficult for me to go back to the consultancy world. Because remember, you are a governor.
True.
Or deputy governor.
Deputy governor, yeah.
Now, if you go to USAID and say, I'm James Nyoro and I have a CV
Yes.
and I want to do this consultancy, they say, you can't do the consultancy as a deputy governor.
Yeah.
Okay? And then, of course, there is fear for, that the governor may come in and say, why are you undermining me by...
Exactly.
So I realized that whatever I tried, I tried consultancies, I tried doing some business, and all of this was undermined by the sheer fact that I'm a deputy governor by name, but not the deputy governor, by deed.
Yes.
And at a certain point, I realized that the only opportunity that existed was to go and work outside.
Okay.
And I started working my way outside. You'll be shocked to know that on the day when Honorable Tito was arrested, I was actually 800 kilometers north of a town called Luanda in Angola.
All right, so you
starting
weren't...
to do other things, because I was very determined that at the end of that year I would not have continued wasting my time. I had started to do other things. So, and when I hear people complain about Igadi, I feel they don't understand exactly what he was going through. Because if what I was going through was anything to go by, then you can excuse.
It must have been worse.
You can excuse what happened to Deputy Governor Igadi.
Okay.
So, Igadi. So, I think for me, one of the lessons I've learned is never to trust anybody. You can only trust God. Because the kind of things that we said we would do, at one point I was told there is no debt in politics. And that is what propelled us to do the kind of things that we did.
Okay. So, looking at that tumultuous transition, and you eventually got the reins of the county of Kiambu, what exactly would you highlight about devolution as it is and the relationship between the governor and the deputy governor? Because it's not just the case in Kiambu. We've seen it play out yet again, especially in Nairobi. We know the importance Nairobi brings with it. What would you say?
I think two things. One, the formulators of the Constitution and the country in particular must really think seriously on the role of deputy governors. Because as it is provided for now in the Constitution, as a principal assistant to the governor, if the governor decides not to be principally assisted, then most of the deputy governors would be out there, they will be seen, but they will be doing nothing.
No deeds at all.
Now, unfortunately, we've seen instances where those same deputy governors, because of acts of either court or nature, they all of a sudden find themselves to become governors. Okay, whether it is in the case of impeachment, like in my case, or whether in the case of death, like in Nyamira or Bomet, you find these people whose experience has not been tested. They have not had any experience in running the county, and all of a sudden, they have become governors because of the provision in the Constitution. And that is why the community, our communities need to get worried and ask, do we have a deputy governor who, in the case of the absence of the governor, can run our county and run it effectively? So it is not just the question of the deputy governor suffering. It is also a societal problem on if an opportunity arises and this is the guy who becomes governor, can he really lead this county to the period or to the levels that we would want? That is one. The second one is to look at the Constitution, and the formulators of the Constitution and the spirit of the Constitution is right in indicating within the provision that in the absence of the governor, the deputy governor takes over. That is very good spirit.
Yes.
And it is the same, I think, in the country. In the absence of the president, the deputy president takes over.
Quite so.
Unfortunately, that provision in the Constitution was interpreted wrongly by the County Governments Act, Section 34, I think subsection 4, which says, when the deputy governor takes over the position of governor, you shall not do the following. So your hands are completely tied.
Okay.
So under the circumstance like which I became acting governor, I could not move people. I could not sometimes even appropriate money.
Yeah.
I was there kind of like to be seen and heard, but no action was to be taken. And now it does not matter how long this. For me, it took 6 months. Working with the same people who are working in the previous administration, and these same people, remember that previous administration was not removed because of good deeds. It was removed because of bad deeds, as it were.
Yes.
And the people who are doing these bad deeds are still with you, but constitutionally, your hands are tied. You cannot be able to move. I tried to move one, and unfortunately, he went to court, and I was stopped from moving it.
Yes.
So there has to be some rethinking, because the circumstances in which I became acting governor were not circumstances that are contemplated in the County Governments Act, that you should not do those things when the governor is on a trip, on an international trip, or abroad, or when the governor is sick, because he will very quickly come back to the office.
Okay.
But the circumstances in which I took over the ring is that you may not know when the governor will ever come back, because he was asked to step aside.
Okay.
So under those circumstances, the courts need really to look at that section, because I suffered, people of Kiambu suffered. But nevertheless, I think, I want to thank God, because next Sunday, I'll be celebrating 1 year in office, because I was sworn in on 31st of January, 2020. And at that point then, I became a full-fledged governor. However, you also have to realize that the people now you are working with have lost their positions, because that's the provision of the Constitution.
Sure.
So the CECs that you are working with must be revetted afresh.
Again.
Yeah?
All over again.
So now the question is, all of a sudden they become jobless, and here you are alone, they are the ones who are running the show without consulting you, and all of a sudden they're gone. And, and of course, the other unfortunate thing, which is not within the Constitution, is that 1 month later, COVID-19 broke. And now we had to hit the ground running.
And adapt.
And adapt to the circumstances, get resources. But we thank God, today, there is not a single patient of COVID-19 in Kiambu County.
Well, this is really proper.
That we would really, really thank God for that.
Okay. Yeah. Governor, in one way or the other, you jumped the gun, but I will go with your flow.
No, but you see, it's really the kind of things, when you look at the whole trajectory, the whole story, and the journey, it kind of puts you between a rock and a hard place.
Quite so.
And what you have to do is to make decisions very, very quickly. Otherwise, time is not on your side. I mean, like for instance, vetting. I had to make a quick decision on should I send all of them home, or should I get new ones? If I get new ones, there is a running curve. Do we have that running curve? And now COVID is breaking, all of that.
And so time is limited.
And time is also limited. And then the worst of all is the expectations of Kiambu people. The expectations even up to now, they were so high, without realizing that actually we were in a county that was totally devastated financially. Okay? So you are coming in a county where there's no resources, resources are misappropriated. You know, there's so many things. Corruption is very high, but people are having high expectations that things are going to change the following day.
Yes.
So you have to manage all of these expectations.
It's not an easy task.
No.
1 year is quite a long time in politics, and especially in administrative work. Looking back at this year, what exactly would you say is the main highlight, despite the challenges that were brought forth? What exactly would you say is the main highlight of Governor Nyoro's administration in Kiambu County? 3
areas. The first one is to put sense where none existed. I inherited a very mismanaged county. Systems were abused for the purpose of land seeking and so on. So if you look at the financial systems were all abused, procurement systems were abused. So you are entering into a government where systems were totally non-existent. 2, corruption was very high. Even now, you wouldn't say that you have been able to control corruption. And you know, what I mean is this: corruption was actually taking place from the lowest person, who you would say is a washroom cleaner or whatever, through to the middle cadre, so a driver who has a fuel card,
yes.
But when you calculate, you have on average 150 liters per kilometer on a small car, going to misuse of interest and procurement, and going to all levels. So corruption across the board. So the first thing that I have done is to make sure that I've sealed those loopholes. And it has not been easy. For instance, in hospitals, patients would come in and they would pay cash.
Yeah.
So at the end of the month, at the end of the day, you would collect 200,000 shillings. This money was supposed to be taken to the bank. The person taking the money to the bank, first of all, there is a shield between the med soup, the guy who actually saw the money being collected. Yes. There is a shield between that person and the bank account. So 200,000 is collected, but only 20,000 gets to the account. Now, the med soup will not know because there is a shield.
Yes.
So we have come in and we have introduced a payress system where we are using an SSD *419# or a pay bill. So if you are coming as a patient and you have money and you don't have money in your M-Pesa, we have an M-Pesa agent at the gate. So now, by doing that alone, we have had an increase of 400,000 shillings per day. Now,
how important is that in the running of a county?
Oh, it is very, if you're talking about 400,000, I'll come to that, how important it is. So, making those systems payress, cashless, okay? Then, you go to other places like quarries, where we are getting a lot of money. On average, all our quarries would probably give us, now, they will probably give us between 500 and 600,000 shillings per day.
A day.
Now, we were lucky to get 200 or 250,000. Because the guy collecting takes this money to somebody else sitting somewhere. And by the time you are taking it to somebody else, who is the boss or whatever it is, of course you must have taken your chunk. We had quarries where the people collecting the money were cashiers, and they were not being paid. So if you ask a cashier to collect money for you, and you are not paying the cashier the salary, what are you talking about? And we can go on and on and on. So, parking lots. So what we've done is sealing those loopholes completely. Well, not completely, we still have some. And let me tell you, and I want to give you, because we've done some other changes, the structure of the finance department, moving people right, left, center, procurement changes in there. Like now, we've just entered into the new year. End of December, the last week of December, we collected 19 million own source revenue for the whole county.
Okay.
End of second week of January, we collected 31 million. Just this past week, we collected 53 million by just seeing those loopholes. But you know what? Corruption fights back.
Still.
Okay?
Yeah.
Those people who are benefiting from that system now will start throwing tantrums and all kinds of things at you. Okay? Because they would want you not to be there.
Exactly.
You cannot, as it were, stop them from doing the things. So that was one. And I am telling you that I'm very determined that public resources in Kiambu would not be misused. We are sealing as much as we can the loopholes so that we can get at least some money. Kiambu has the capacity to collect 8 billion shillings annually on own source revenue. If it is physical plants, if it is parking lots, if it is rad rate and so on. So that was one.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's just to realize that service delivery is very important. People will know whether there is a government or not if they go to hospitals and they find that there is a doctor and there is this medicine. And we came to a county where, even before COVID, the health services were very, very poorly delivered.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you cannot imagine for 7 years that hospital linen has been washed by hand. Hospital linen, you are talking about, Thika Hospital.
Yeah.
You can imagine the number of patients there is in the wards. And that the following day, there is somebody from Kiambu washing that linen by hand for 7 years. So one thing that we've done was very quickly, before COVID, we installed rotary equipment with dryers. And actually, in places, certain places, we even decided to make them solar. Just a very simple act. Of course, we also made sure that the drugs were available. I'm talking about before COVID.
Yes, before COVID.
The drugs were available, that bed spaces were increased so that you never again would see 2 patients sharing a bed.
And it's interesting you brought up the health. Allow me to cut you short right there. Whatever is going on in the country is quite unfortunate, especially since it comes at a time where we're facing the coronavirus. What exactly would you have to say in terms of your government's aerial focus in terms of health? We've seen health workers who are on strike. We're seeing a couple of issues still to do with the health sector brought about by the coronavirus and economic issues as well. What's your focus as the county? You see,
the unfortunate thing is that, like, for instance, you heard that this week NMS will be opening a number of hospitals in Nairobi.
Yeah.
We have increased our bed capacity by 1,000 beds. We have installed bulk oxygen into all our level 4, 2 level 4 and 3 level 5 hospitals. And this is not just for COVID. It's even for ordinary sicknesses, including pediatrics. Children, I was told, 30% of children die because immediately they are born, their system is not activated to breathe. So we have installed that. So, and we have a very modern ambulance fleet that we have leased. Instead of going to buy, we've leased. So these facilities are in excellent condition.
All right.
The drugs are available. But unfortunately, there is no personnel. Now, initially, we thought this was easy. Because the conditions that the medical personnel, whether doctors, clinical officers or nurses, the problems that they were raising were more towards the working environment. Because for sure, they were exposed to COVID situations. And COVID insurance was not paying for COVID. So if you are, and we've done that. We've lost some medical personnel, and I can tell you what we have done. 2 of them were in KU referral. We have paid cash because there was no provision for insurance. So there were some genuine things that the medical personnel has been raising. When it comes to issues of protective clothing, I do not agree that we can have an umbrella condemnation. I think this is very specific to, like, for instance, for us, we have always gone for very high quality protective clothing, whether it is PPEs or masks. So the unfortunate thing is that this whole issue of medical personnel has been entangled between the national government, the labor unions, and the governors through COG. Because when the national government agrees on certain measures and certain things to be done, without involving the Council of Governors, the Council of Governors are saying, we have a budget. So if you tell us to pay, we can't pay because we can. You would have involved us in the discussion, we would have seen the incremental, and we would have requested you for a conditional grant.
So it would have been handled better.
It would have been handled better.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah. So even you know, the way we have made it piecemeal, that sometimes we agree with doctors and doctors come back.
Yes.
Doctors require clinical officers to work effectively.
All right.
And when clinical officers are seen and nurses are not seen, clinical officers become more effective when they use nurses. So it should be more holistic and more consultative and collaborative so that whatever we are able to agree on, we can move on.
Okay, enough about health. I'd like to talk about agriculture briefly.
But I wanted to tell you, that for us, health has been one of the key pillars in terms of service delivery. We are very, very proud about the additional health facilities. We have put up hospitals where none existed. So we are very happy as far as health is concerned. The second area before you come to agriculture, because I categorize that separately, is provision of water. Because again, provision of water is related to COVID containment measures. And you know, Kiambu, our connectivity is about 56% of the population. But if you realize that we are, you know, the water comes from up there, Rari down to Thika, there are many rivers flowing there, we should have a connectivity of 80%. But the problem is that we've not had holistic thinking. If you look at the way we've been treating water, is that you drill a borehole here, another borehole there, another one here, and there's no holistic. What we have done is to have a very holistic thinking about water. And we have realized that there are places where there is good water catchment, which can be tapped and be delivered to another place that is lacking. I'll give you an example. Undire in Kikuyu. It is a very, very rich water catchment area. Not just the water in the dam itself. You know, the area has very rich aquifers. And what we have done is we have dug six boreholes, some of them with throughput of about 100 cubic per hour. And now, having those six, we have looked at the catchment and said, we can now be able to extend this water to the whole of Kikuyu town, go to Kino, go to the sides of Sigona, go to Deya, where they've never had water, go to Gikambura and those areas. Now, if you look at Karuri in Kiamba, it's a water deficit place. You'll be shocked. It is just 2 months ago that we pulled some water from Tigoni to come through Karuri on to Mushada. We are now pumping 1 million liters per day. That never existed. Now, the holistic thinking is that there is a place called Romo. Romo is on those sides of Rari. And it's another very rich aquifer. So our idea is to use that aquifer so that we can pump water to Kiamba and Karura. If you look at Juja, they've been mining stones. Honestly, you cannot expect water to come from stones.
Definitely,
So we are looking at the possibility of tapping water from the Gatundu side, and then Karimeno, which comes from Gatundu North. So that holistic thinking, yes, which was not there, is the one that is propelling us towards that direction. Now, let me come to the area that you are talking about. You see, what has happened is that people can buy water. They can buy health.
Easily,
Because the other area that we've done very well is on roads. But you know, we'll talk about that. And they can also buy roads. You can also buy your own road. Okay? What does that mean? You need to have money in your pocket. If you have money in your pocket, you can decide not to go to Kiambu Hospital. You can decide to go to Nairobi Hospital. Okay?
It gives you the power of options.
Exactly. But what has been happening all over this time is that what I call community enhancing ability of the community to become more self-sufficient and generate their income has not been there. So we have rolled out a major agricultural transformation program. It starts with food security. You know, Kiambu may be very close to Nairobi, but it's completely food insecure. Why?
Is it?
Yes. We produce coffee, we produce tea. And we produce milk. Except milk that you can boil and give to your kids, you cannot boil tea leaves and give to your kids as food, and you cannot boil coffee.
As well. Yeah.
Okay? So when coffee, tea, and milk is not paid, particularly coffee and tea, when it's not paid because of all these wrangles that you're hearing, people cannot afford food because they get the money from the cash crops to buy food.
The purchasing power goes down,
yes.
yeah.
At the same time, you also know that land has become very expensive in Kiambu. So the whole aspect of the concrete jungle, you know, moving towards Kiambu, increasing the opportunity cost of land. So when the opportunity cost of land goes high, you cannot plant maize on an acre.
No, you can't.
Okay?
Yeah.
So people essentially are food insecure. Now, if you look at some of the arid areas, like where I'm born in Deya, or Gatuanyaga and Goliva, those are very arid areas. So people are without food.
All right.
So we've come up with a food security program, you know, through making sure that people access the very, very certified seeds, appropriate technologies of fertilizer, reintroducing a new extension method where farmers become their own extension agents by being trained. So that we have done. Now, even the coffee and tea that we are talking about has not been managed properly. And I can tell you, one of the things that we have done now is that we are looking forward over the next 1 month to acquire a mill, a coffee mill, that will be milling all our coffee, because all our coffee societies have come together. They have formed an association, and they have registered that association, and they have said, we want to produce together, process together, and mill together, and market together.
And market together as
well.
Now,
if you do that, you start to attract resources from all sides that will support rejuvenation of the coffee sector. The same with dairy. We are now the biggest producer of dairy in the country. Kiambu is the biggest. It's no longer Uasin Gishu. And we have some of the very successful dairy cooperatives like Githunguri. Githunguri is one of those very successful dairy cooperatives.
Yes.
We have Duberi, which is coming up. We have Remuru, which we are helping to come up. But we have another 26 small ones that reach out to the deep end of Kiambu. So what we've done is we've asked them to come together. They formed an association. We are looking for resources, and we have gotten some resources to buy them coolers, to buy them pasteurizers, to assist them with AI, veterinary, and some other shared services, so that you can start to improve. And then we negotiate with some of the processors, like Brookside or KCC and whatever, so that they can uptake this as soon as it has been pasteurized and cooled. And then, over time, as we increase the production, we will think about creating our own milk processing plant, Kiambu milk processing, whatever.
Yes.
But things must move slowly.
Exactly, and it's the holistic thinking aspect. It's holistic thinking.
But let me tell you one more thing. And Kiambu people from Central are known because of their entrepreneurial capacity.
Spirit, yes,
okay?
yes.
But unfortunately, that entrepreneurial capacity has to be created. Our young people only will eye at people who have succeeded. Really? And one thing that we've done, and we'll be rolling out this now in my second year. One thing that we've done is we have negotiated with KCB for a facility of 1.3 billion. This is a facility that should be able to give our young people, startups, our people who are in business, a loan facility on subsidized interest rate. So if you go in for 150,000, you'll be charged 7% instead of 13%, because we subsidize the 6%.
Okay.
And then you don't have to provide any security, because we start security for you. But then, that is as far as the demand is concerned.
Yeah.
The supply is concerned.
Yes.
The supply is concerned.
Yes.
Where is the demand?
Yeah.
The demand is what we are doing now. We are creating a school that we are calling BDS, Business Development Service Center. This is a school that we have identified the place in Duberi, and what we'll be doing from February is to go out and get cohorts of people who will be interviewed. We will see their interest in becoming entrepreneurs, and those who are interested in car wash, will be put into a class for 2 weeks, and they will be taught technically what it is like to run a car wash business.
What you need.
What you need.
Yeah.
They will be taught how to do accounts so that you can differentiate between capital and income. You don't need capital.
That's
you
very
eat your
important.
profit.
Yes.
They will be taught, legal requirements. They will be taught marketing. So we'll do that for car wash. We'll do it also for mechanics. We'll do that for salons. People already want to do salons. For barbers, for all kinds of people who are interested in this. Taking them through those 2 weeks.
Just targeting the youth or vulnerable groups as well?
First, we are targeting the youth.
Okay.
Those will be the startups for the youth.
Yeah.
We are thinking that once we roll out that program, we can now target these others. We are also interested in targeting the soccer people, the traders in markets.
Yes.
But more importantly, is to target the youth.
Okay.
Because if you succeed there, and we are thinking that by doing this, we are creating the next lot of millionaires over the next 5-6 years. Because the sky will be the limit.
Definitely, and the entrepreneurial spirit will definitely be cultured. Exactly. So we've talked about some of the successes of the Nyoro administration in Kiambu County. Before we touch on the politics aspect, what exactly would you mention is the biggest challenge?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Shortly, sir. No, there are a lot of challenges. First of all these things that we are talking about are politicized. So if you are talking about fighting corruption, then it is politicized.
Corruption will fight back, yes.
Corruption will fight back. If you are talking about restructuring, ensuring that things are done properly, like for instance, the other day somebody leaked out management letters.
Yeah, we saw that,
and we all know what management letters are. And we all know the era that these management letters came.
Yes.
But nevertheless, you should treat management letters as they are. So now somebody wants to over-politicize. So, and now you said we are getting to 2022. So everything will be looked with that lens, political lens. So that's one of the challenges. Now the other challenge is that unless you share this vision with people across the board, you share it with Kiambu people so that they understand what you are talking about. You share it with the members of the county assembly. Because at the end of the day, you'll be requiring them to pass certain things.
Exactly.
They are providing oversight on what you are doing. So unless you have to spend time to share the vision.
So it's a common goal.
Yes, and now if you are sharing the vision in the mix of politics, it becomes very, very, very difficult.
And it's quite hectic.
And it can be hectic.
Okay.
The other one is finance, availability of finance, as you probably know. Yeah. This year has not been very good. We've been having delays.
Has money been disbursed to the counties?
There is catching up.
Yes.
We still have about 2 months arrears, but it's catching up. But you can imagine when that does not happen and people are paid monthly, then you have to think about many other areas. So those are some of the challenges. They are not insurmountable. Okay. But I can tell you that you do that very well on management and improvement of people's well-being. But you also have to be a shrewd politician.
Quite so.
Yes.
And that goes without saying. One more thing that you've mentioned and it came to my mind is what devolution was intended to, actually make sure that service delivery goes down to the common mwananchi. But with the challenges we've seen with the finances that we've mentioned, what would you make of various proposals that might be put in place? Increase county allocation to 35% instead of 15%. What do you make of that?
The rest of the world, I think that Kenya was very daring to have implemented devolution without even testing it. There was no pilot.
Yes.
It was rolled out, 47 counties.
Straight into it.
And as a scholar, I can tell you that a number of skeptics were saying it will not work. Let me tell you, devolution has worked.
Yes.
Resources and services have reached to some people who would never have, benefited. So it has worked. It has its own loopholes because instead of one central government, you have 47 governments. So if there is one bad thread, it cuts across the 47.
True.
Two things should happen. One, and we've been arguing this as COG, there are certain services that have been devolved. Unfortunately, the national government still keeps the money. If you look at agriculture, which has been totally devolved,
yeah.
If you look at the Ministry of Agriculture, they still retain a huge amount of money. okay, for services that have been devolved. So, and the same with water and roads. So one thing that should happen is that for the devolved function, okay, and you know they say money for us functions,
yeah,
okay? So for devolved functions, I think the government should endear itself to release more funds to the counties, whether they want to release it as a conditional grant or as you know, the normal shared whatever, they can do that. So that needs to be done. National government should let go the money for the functions that have been devolved.
So
that will increase the cash flow for the counties. I think the second thing that needs to be done is to think about increasing, now that we have done this experiment, and we have seen that 15% can work, and there are signs that it can work. That is where now we come into this proposal within the BBI of whether it can move to 35%.
Yes.
I know skeptics are saying, if you cannot release 15%, how can you release 35%?
True.
But if you look at, you know, holistically some of the issues that are brought in within BBI, and some of those will be hopefully to stabilize the country and stop being in campaign mode the day after the election, that you can now, you know, people are all involved and they are busy, and you can now bake the cake together, then we are talking about baking a bigger cake.
Yeah.
If you bake a bigger cake, then 35% of the bigger cake then makes sense. So I don't think we should do what I would call partial thinking.
All right.
I think we should do a much more holistic thinking. But I think it's time that the counties are given a bigger proportion of the budget coming from the national government. So those two should be able to happen.
Okay, and we definitely hope devolution will continue prospering. 2021 is definitely going to be a busy year political-wise. Not bearing in mind, this is a busy week for you, celebrating 1 year.
Or giving, not even celebrating, but giving a scorecard.
Oh, giving a scorecard.
Yes.
And you mentioned the expectations of Kiambu people are quite high. Going forward, Mheshimiwa, politics is definitely going to play a part it has already, and is playing a part in your service delivery to the common mwananchi. I dare ask, should we see James Nyoro in the 2022 general elections vying for governor of Kiambu? Is this in the plan?
There's no doubt about that.
It goes
There's
without saying.
no doubt about it. It goes without saying, because our belief is that we have another 1 year. Look at the project that I'm talking about on youth empowerment. By the end of the year, it will just have started.
Have taken off, yes.
Now, we also want to create a team that will be supervising them to see some of the challenges that are emerging. You ask me whether it is just for the youth. It needs to graduate to women, to men, and all of that. So, you know, if you are a good manager, you are starting, we are in the foundation now. And what we will do in 2022 is to go back to the people and tell them, look, this is what we have done so far, and the job is not complete. So we are requesting you to extend our contract for another 5 years so that we can do this and do more. So it goes without saying that I'll be there in 2022 asking Kiambu people to look at our scorecard and see whether what we have done is sufficient to prepare us so that they can give us a contract for 5 years. So I'll be there.
Well, that's interesting to note. What exactly will be the main focus going into 2022? Because you've mentioned the scorecard, yes. I mean, the people will judge you via the work you've done, but the main focus in order to endear these people who might have had high expectations you coming into office, perhaps because of the nature in which you did, but how do you, what's the main priority? The
main priority will be efficient delivery of services, to people. If you can minimize or totally eradicate corruption, it means there is value. Like I have told you, what is the difference between 19 and 53?
True.
You know, it's so huge. 30 million can do several kilometers. Several kilometers of Maram Road. So the essence will be to be able to deliver cost-effective services. Okay. Because right now, even if we are delivering services, we are delivering them at a slightly higher cost than otherwise the private sector would do. So you put in measures that will ensure that we can continue to have the best hospitals, we can continue to have the best doctors, but at a much more cost-effective manner, so that other resources will go towards maybe doing water or ECD for our children, or vocational training centers. And so the first one is efficient delivery of services through several areas. Now, the second one, very, very important, is economic empowerment of Kiambu people. Kiambu people want to be rich. They don't want just to be drinking water. And they don't want just to be walking on a good road. They want to drive on the good road. They want to drink milk. They want to do, they want to be rich.
Yes.
So the bigger question is, what should we do in order to increase the sharing in Kiambu residents' pocket? Now, those are the areas that I'm talking about. Make sure that you don't spend money buying food. So whatever you can, whatever small area that you have put in other food, you can be able to get the maximum use of technologies that are available elsewhere.
Yeah.
2, if you are in cash crop production, get your money and get your appropriate money in time. So if you are in coffee, if you are in tea, if you are in horticulture, we have to streamline to make sure that you not only get your money in time, but you also get the money that you deserve. And 3 is this whole area of entrepreneurs, our young people. And I have not talked about sports. I have not talked about all of that. But first and foremost is for people to get engaged and start making money for themselves.
All right.
That way, you reduce crime. You can even reduce the alcohol consumption, which is another big menace that you have. All those social ills can be taken care of if our people are engaged in this. So
economic empowerment.
Economic empowerment is so important.
All right.
And finally, it's for the people to start looking at politics as an enabler. Because our people have had this feeling that when it comes to political year, we shelve development.
Yes.
Without realizing that bad politics means bad development.
True.
Okay? Good politics means good development. So I think that, to me, I feel I have an honors of educating our people about, because there are counties that have done well because of good politics.
Good politics, simply.
So that, to me, is an enabler to achieving the other 2 goals.
And Governor, we wish you all the best as you pursue that particular path. Very last question as we finalize. Do we expect Governor James Nyoro in the campaign trail for the BBI?
Yes.
Considering what's happened in Central and the clamor around it?
Yes, you do.
Quite so.
You do. You do. Because I believe in BBI. And I can tell you that I'm doing that both as somebody who has studied the Constitution, but also as somebody who has studied Kenya. I told you I was not in charge of Kenya. I was looking at Kenya from outside.
Yes.
And some of the things that BBI is suggesting, forget about all these issues of more positions created and whatever. If we can become a cohesive nation, okay? If we can spend less time on politics and spend more on development, if we can grow our economy so that people are not asking for salaries so that they can afford food, because that's what is happening. Yeah. The reason why everybody wants a higher salary is because they want to afford food. If you bring the cost of food down, people will start stabilizing. So when I look at that, when I look at equal representation, like for us in Kiambu, the creation of additional constituencies, when I look at all of that, I am a strong believer that we can be able to convince the doubting Thomases that this is good for people of Kiambu, it's good for Central, it's good for Kenya. So you definitely expect to see me campaigning for BBI.
And what better way to end this particular interview? Governor James Nyoro, many thanks for your input right here. We definitely appreciate, and especially the fact that we see leaders who might definitely have good intentions for the country. It's the holistic approach towards this development agenda that will definitely drive us to where we need to be, not just as counties, but as a nation as well. Governor, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All right, let's wrap it up right there. We take a short break. We'll be back with more.
This is KTN News.